I stood in the middle of a crowded ballroom while my wife thanked another man for being the reason she succeeded. The applause was loud. Too loud. Every person in the room smiled and raised their glasses. I couldn't move. On the giant screen behind the stage, photos from Victoria's company journey flashed one after another. Board meetings, award ceremonies, magazine covers, business trips, victories, years of her life, years of our marriage. Then Victoria stepped closer to the microphone. Her black dress shimmered beneath the lights. Confident, elegant, untouchable. The same woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder while dreaming about building her company. The same woman who once promised we would succeed together. She smiled toward the audience, then toward Ryan. I wouldn't be standing here tonight without the people who stayed beside me through every challenge. More applause. Ryan stood from his table. Victoria's smile widened. Especially Ryan. The crowd cheered. A spotlight landed on him. He placed a hand over his heart and laughed modestly. The room loved him. Victoria loved having him there. Meanwhile, I stood near the back wall like a stranger who had wandered into the wrong event. My name never came. Not once. Not even by accident. The speech continued. I stopped listening because something inside me had already gone quiet. A waiter walked past. Champagne, sir. I shook my head. The glass in my hand was already untouched, much like everything else in my life lately. 3 hours earlier, I had been sitting alone at our dining table. The food was getting cold. Again, a candle burned between two plates. Again, my phone rested beside my fork. No messages. Again, the chicken I cooked for Victoria had been ready almost an hour. The sauce was drying. The vegetables had lost their color. I stared at the empty chair across from me, waiting, always waiting. Then my phone finally vibrated. A message, not from my wife, from her assistant. Victoria is heading directly to the gala venue. She will make dinner. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just another canceled evening. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, because I honestly didn't know what else to do anymore. The candle burned lower. The food stayed untouched. Eventually, I carried everything into the kitchen. One plate, then another. The sound of dishes felt louder than usual inside the empty house. Things hadn't always been like this. Years ago, Victoria and I were a team. When her company was nothing more than a small office and a dream, I was there. When investors rejected her, I was there. When she cried after losing major contracts, I was there. When she doubted herself, I stayed. I gave up opportunities, turned down promotions, put my own plans aside. At the time, it felt easy because I believed we were building something together. Love made sacrifices feel meaningful. At least that's what I thought. Somewhere along the way, her company became our entire life. Then it became her entire life. Then it became the only thing that mattered. Back at the gala, people surrounded Victoria as soon as she stepped off stage. Executives, investors, journalists. Everyone wanted a piece of her attention. I watched from a distance, waiting. Maybe she'd notice me. Maybe she'd walk over. Maybe she'd remember I existed. Ryan reached her first. They laughed about something. Victoria touched his arm. A small gesture, probably harmless, but it still felt like someone pressing a thumb against a bruise. Minutes passed, then more. Finally, her eyes found me across the room. For a second, I thought she might come over. Instead, she checked her watch. Her expression tightened. Work. Always work. She approached at last. Not with a smile. Not with excitement. Just urgency. Ethan. Victoria. You made it. I almost laughed. Made it? Like I was a guest. Like I wasn't her husband. I wouldn't miss your big night. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down immediately. A reflex. More natural than looking at me. I'm glad you came. The words sounded automatic. Practiced. Like she had already moved on to the next conversation. I searched her face. Trying to find the woman I married. Trying to find anything. You looked happy up there. A brief smile appeared. It was a great night. Yeah. The pause stretched. People brushed past us. Music played somewhere behind the crowd. Victoria shifted her attention toward another group waiting nearby. Business partners. Important people. More important than me. I need to talk with some investors. Of course. You always do. Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Maybe guilt. Maybe annoyance. Maybe nothing. Ethan, the unfinished sentence hung between us. Then someone called her name. Victoria turned immediately. Duty answered. Conversation over. The space beside me became empty again. Near midnight, the event finally ended. Victoria stayed behind for private meetings. Naturally, I drove home alone. Streetlights blurred past my windshield. The city looked beautiful, cold, distant, unreachable, a lot like my marriage. The house was dark when I arrived. Victoria wouldn't be home for hours. I loosened my tie and walked upstairs. Something caught my attention inside the hallway. Our wedding photo, the large frame picture that used to hang proudly on the wall. Now it sat partially hidden behind several company awards. Glass trophies, executive plaques, business achievements. The photo wasn't removed, just pushed aside, like it no longer belonged. I stared at it for a long time. Then I walked away, because somehow that hurt more. Not destruction, replacement. Inside our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed with social media notifications from the gala. Photos, videos, comments, praise. Victoria everywhere. Ryan everywhere. I open our message thread. Months of unanswered texts. Short conversations. Missed plans. Broken promises. Then my attention landed on one message. A message I had sent 6 months ago. Our anniversary. I opened it slowly. Happy anniversary. No matter how busy life gets, I'll always choose you. Unread. Still unread. 6 months. She never opened it. Never saw it. Never cared enough to look. My thumb hovered over the screen. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Not because of anger. Because of clarity. The painful kind. The kind that arrives after years of making excuses for someone. I placed the phone down. My hands felt numb. Everything suddenly made sense. The forgotten dinners. The missed birthdays. The empty conversations. The distance. I wasn't losing my wife. I had already lost her. I just hadn't admitted it. Around 1 a.m, I walked downstairs toward Victoria's home office. Part of me wanted answers. Part of me wanted proof that I was wrong, that this was all in my head. The office door stood slightly open. Her desk lamp was still on. Papers covered the surface. Business reports, contracts, financial projections. I opened a drawer looking for a folder she mentioned earlier that week. Instead, another file caught my attention. A plain folder. My name printed neatly across the front. Ethan Carter. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I opened it. The first page appeared. Then the second. Then the third. Legal language. Property division. Signatures waiting to be filled. Divorce documents. Already prepared. Already organized. Already planned. My name was printed on every page. I stood frozen beneath the office light. The house around me remained silent. The folder trembled slightly in my hands. And for the first time that night, I understood something far worse than being forgotten. Victoria hadn't simply moved on like I never existed. She had already prepared a future without me in it. The divorce papers stayed open on Victoria's desk long after the shock faded. Morning sunlight crept through the office windows. I hadn't slept. The folder was still in my hands. Every page felt heavier than the last. Years of marriage reduced to signatures and legal terms. No warning, no conversation, no fight worth remembering. Just paperwork. The front door opened downstairs. Victoria was finally home. Her heels clicked against the floor. Steady, confident, like nothing had changed, like my world hadn't collapsed a few hours earlier. I heard her place her purse on the kitchen counter. A cabinet opened, a glass filled with water. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds. Meanwhile, my marriage was dying upstairs. I carried the folder into the kitchen. Victoria stood beside the island scrolling through emails. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. Her phone never left her hand. The folder landed on the counter between us. The sound finally got her attention. Her gaze dropped. A brief pause. Then another. No surprise. No panic. No confusion. Just recognition. You found them. Those 3 words hurt more than any excuse could have. I waited. Part of me expected her to explain, to deny it, to tell me there was some mistake. Nothing came. How long? Victoria rubbed her forehead. Ethan, how long have these been sitting in your office? Her shoulders sank slightly. A few weeks. A few weeks. While I cooked dinners. While I planned anniversaries. While I kept hoping, the room suddenly felt smaller. A few weeks. I didn't know how to bring it up. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Interesting. Her eyes returned to her phone. Not because she was rude, because she genuinely didn't know how much damage that simple movement caused. Work again. Always work. The thing she reached for first. The thing she loved most. Our marriage hasn't been working. The sentence sounded rehearsed, like she'd repeated it inside her head many times. Hasn't been working for who? Victoria stared toward the windows. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she folded her arms. We've grown apart. No, the answer came immediately. We didn't grow apart. Her jaw tightened. We did. You walked away. The words hung there. Heavy. Uncomfortable. True. Victoria took a slow breath. This isn't about blame. Then what is it about? Her expression became distant. The same expression investors probably saw during negotiations. Cold. Careful. Controlled. Our lives are different now. I nodded slowly. At least she was being honest. Different. One life mattered. The other existed around it. And Ryan? Something flickered across her face. Not guilt. More irritation than anything. What about him? Nothing. Because the answer didn't matter anymore. Not really. Victoria picked up another document from the counter. A business report. Even now, even here, the conversation was competing with work. And losing. We'll handle everything fairly. Fairly. The word almost made me smile. Years of sacrifice. Years of support. Reduced to fairness. My eyes drifted toward my wedding ring. Gold. Simple. Worn every day since our wedding. Victoria noticed where I was looking. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt older than our marriage. Finally, I removed the ring. Slowly. Carefully. It rested on the kitchen counter between us. A small circle of gold. A lifetime of promises. Victoria's eyes followed the movement. For the first time during the entire conversation, she seemed affected. Only for a moment. Then her expression settled again. Professional. Controlled. Almost attached. That hurt more than anger would have. By afternoon, my suitcase sat beside the front door. Everything important fit inside 2 bags. Funny. A whole marriage reduced to luggage. Grace arrived shortly after. My younger sister took one look at the packed suitcase and froze. What happened? I handed her the divorce papers. Her face changed with every page. By the end, she looked ready to drive across town and start a war. She did this. I nodded. Grace stared toward the staircase. Where is she? Working. The answer almost made her laugh. Of course she is. She dropped onto the couch. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then her voice softened. You gave her everything. Maybe that had been the problem. Victoria never came downstairs before I left. Not because she couldn't. Because she was busy. A conference call. An investor meeting. Something important. Always something important. I carried my suitcase to the front door. Then I stopped. One last look. The house felt beautiful. Expensive. Perfect. And completely empty. I returned to the kitchen. The wedding ring remained exactly where I left it. Beside it, I placed my house key. Then, a handwritten note. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cruel. Just truth. Victoria, I spent years choosing us. Eventually, I realized I was choosing us alone. Take care of yourself. Ethan. The note stayed beside the ring. I picked up my suitcase. Waited. Listened. A small part of me still hoped. Maybe she'd come downstairs. Maybe she'd stop me. Maybe she'd finally choose me. The house remained quiet. So I walked out. The separation shocked almost everyone. Friends called. Family members called. Former co-workers called. Questions arrived daily. Victoria never called. That surprised nobody more than me. Days turned into weeks. Then a month. I rented a small apartment across the city. Nothing fancy. Just enough space to breathe. Mia visited one evening carrying coffee and takeout. She studied the apartment. Honestly, what? This place feels more alive than your mansion. That earned a genuine laugh. When I hadn't heard from myself in a long time, Mia settled onto the couch. So what's next? I stared out the window. The answer should have been simple. Instead, it felt terrifying. Because for years, every decision revolved around Victoria. Now, there was only me. I don't know. Good. I frowned. She smiled. That means you're finally asking the right question. A few days later, I stumbled across an interview featuring Ryan. The company had launched a new expansion project. A massive success, according to the media. Ryan stood on stage explaining the strategy. Then he mentioned an idea, a very specific idea. My idea. Years ago, I had discussed that exact concept with Victoria. At our dinner table, on road trips, during late-night brainstorming sessions. Back when she actually listened. I grabbed a notebook from storage. Page after page. Sketches. Plans. Research. Everything dated years before Ryan joined the company. The deeper I dug, the worse it became. Another idea. Then another. Then another. Concepts credited to Ryan. Concepts that originally came from me. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence. Not because I wanted recognition, because suddenly I understood something. Victoria hadn't only forgotten me. She had allowed someone else to replace me. Publicly. Professionally. Completely. Meanwhile, trouble started appearing inside her company. News articles surfaced. Investors questioned recent decisions. Project delays appeared. Budgets increased unexpectedly. Nothing catastrophic. Not yet. Just cracks. Small cracks. But cracks all the same. One evening, Daniel Hayes called me. Victoria's father. His voice sounded exhausted. How are you holding up? Better than expected. A long pause followed. Then a quiet sigh. She's not. That surprised me. Daniel continued. She's making mistakes. Business mistakes. All kinds. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me cared. Part of me couldn't afford to care anymore. Before ending the call, Daniel left me with one final sentence. Some people don't understand what they had until they build a life without it. 3 nights later, my phone rang just before midnight. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello. The voice on the other end sounded familiar. Older. Nervous. Ethan, this is Mark Sullivan, a former investor, one of the earliest supporters of Victoria's company. I sat upright immediately. It's been a while. Too long. His tone carried something unusual. Concern. Urgency. The kind that makes your stomach sink before you even know why. I need to meet you. About what? Several seconds passed. Then his answer arrived. Quiet. Careful. Dangerous. It's about Ryan. My grip tightened around the phone. Mark lowered his voice. I have evidence that he's been manipulating company finances for months. And suddenly, the first real crack in Victoria's perfect empire sounded a lot more like the beginning of a collapse. You're smiling again. Mia dropped a coffee cup onto my desk and pointed at me like she discovered something rare. Didn't know that was still possible. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe you're just funnier than I remembered. Careful. I charge extra for emotional recovery. A laugh escaped before I could stop it. A real one. Not the forced kind I had used during the last few years of my marriage. The office around us wasn't impressive. A small rented space. 3 desks. A conference room barely large enough for 6 people. But every piece of it belonged to me. Every decision. Every success. Every mistake. Mine. Mia sat across from me and opened a folder. Good news. I like those words. 3 new clients. I blinked. 3. She pushed the contracts toward me. Looks like people enjoy paying you for ideas. For a moment, I just stared. Years ago, I had filled notebooks with business concepts, strategies, growth models, market expansion plans. Then I put them away. Victoria's dreams became the priority. Mine became hobbies. Now, those same ideas were building something of my own, something nobody could take credit for. The meeting with Mark Sullivan changed everything. The former investor hadn't exaggerated. Ryan's financial records were a disaster. Hidden transfers, manipulated reports, missing funds. Nothing obvious enough to trigger immediate alarms, but enough to create serious damage over time. Mark slid document after document across the table. The board doesn't know everything yet. And Victoria? A tired expression crossed his face. She trusts him. That answer bothered me more than I expected. Not because I wanted to protect Victoria, because I knew exactly where blind trust could lead. I had lived it. Mark folded his hands. You should know something else. I waited. His eyes settled on me. Several investors recently learned where those expansion strategies came from. The room became very quiet. What do you mean? They know the ideas were yours. I sat back slowly. Mark continued. People talk. Former employees talk even more. A small smile appeared. Ryan's reputation isn't as strong as it used to be. Neither was Victoria's. Over the next few weeks, news articles began appearing almost daily. Questions about financial inconsistencies, concerns from shareholders, project delays, leadership concerns. The headlines became harder to ignore. I never celebrated them, never enjoyed them. Watching Victoria struggle wasn't satisfying. It was sad, because every article reminded me how hard she had worked to build that company, and how easily she had trusted the wrong person. One afternoon, Daniel called. His voice sounded older than usual. We need to talk. An hour later, we sat inside a quiet restaurant. Coffee cooled between us. Daniel stared out the window for several moments. They finally spoke. She knows. My fingers stopped moving around the coffee cup. About Ryan? A slow nod. Most of it. I wasn't surprised. The evidence had become impossible to hide. Daniel exhaled heavily. She's barely sleeping. Part of me wanted to ask if she was okay. The other part stopped me. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. Daniel noticed my hesitation. A sad smile touched his face. You still care. That doesn't change anything. No. His eyes lowered. It doesn't. Victoria's company held an emergency board meeting 2 weeks later. News channels covered every minute. Speculation exploded online. Investors demanded answers. Reporters waited outside headquarters. The image of the untouchable CEO was starting to crack. Then came the biggest shock. Ryan resigned. Officially. Voluntarily. At least that was the public version. The truth looked very different. Several board members pushed him out after reviewing financial records. The damage was already done. Stock prices dropped. Partnership deals stalled. Confidence disappeared. And Victoria stood in the center of the storm. Alone. Late one evening, I received an unexpected text from an old employee who used to work directly under Victoria. A single photo appeared. Nothing more. I stared at the image. Victoria's office. Her desk. One open drawer. Inside sat my wedding ring. The ring I left behind. The ring she could have thrown away. The ring she could have mailed back. The ring she could have ignored. Instead, she kept it, locked inside her desk. For some reason, that bothered me more than it should have. Business continued improving. Client after client signed contracts. Word spread. Recommendations followed. The company grew faster than anyone expected, including me. One evening, Mia dropped another stack of paperwork onto my desk. We need more employees. I raised an eyebrow. That's a nice problem to have. Better than crying into cold dinners. The joke landed, mostly because it was true. Mia leaned against the doorway. You know what the funniest part is? What? You finally stopped chasing someone. I waited. Her smile softened, and suddenly your life started moving. The words stayed with me long after she left. Meanwhile, Victoria's situation kept getting worse. Through business news and mutual contacts, pieces of the story reached me. Board members questioned her judgment. Investors challenged her decisions. Projects stalled. Employees left. The pressure kept growing. Then another detail surfaced, one that hit much harder. Apparently, during an internal investigation, several archived company files had been reviewed. Old strategy proposals, market research plans, expansion concepts, ideas. My ideas. Ideas I had shared years ago across dinner tables and late-night conversations. Ideas credited to Ryan. Ideas Victoria apparently never realized came directly from me. Or maybe she had forgotten. That possibility hurt more. A week later, Daniel called again. His voice carried something new. Regret. She found your notebooks. My grip tightened around the phone. What? The ones from years ago. I closed my eyes. Immediately, I knew which notebooks he meant. The black journals stored in the attic. The journals full of sketches and plans. The journals I thought nobody cared about. Daniel continued quietly. Every strategy Ryan claimed was his. He paused. Your handwriting was on every page. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. A long silence stretched between us. Then Daniel spoke again. She didn't know. I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because somehow that made everything worse. Victoria had spent years overlooking the person closest to her. Not out of cruelty, out of neglect, a different kind of damage, but damage all the same. That night, sleep never came. Around midnight, I found myself standing beside the window. City lights glowed below. My phone rested in my hand. Victoria's contact still existed. A simple name, nothing more. I stared at it, then locked the screen. There was nothing left to say. The next morning started normally. Emails, meetings, client calls, contracts, life. The receptionist buzzed my office around noon. Someone's here to see you. I checked my schedule. No appointment. I know. Something in her voice sounded unusual. She says it's important. Before I could respond, the office door opened. My breath caught. Victoria stood in the doorway. Not the polished CEO from magazine covers. Not the powerful woman commanding boardrooms. Just Victoria. Tired eyes, tense shoulders, a face carrying weeks of sleepless nights. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. Then she took one slow step forward. Ethan. The sound of my name seemed fragile coming from her. She swallowed hard. I know I don't deserve this. Another step. Another pause. I just need 10 minutes. The confidence she once carried everywhere was gone. What remained looked painfully human. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since our separation, I saw something stronger than pride. Regret. 10 minutes, she whispered. To tell you the truth, I should have told you years ago. Victoria stood inside my office doorway, like someone who had traveled 1,000 miles only to discover she was already too late. The woman in front of me barely resembled the CEO who once controlled every room she entered. Her shoulders carried exhaustion. Her eyes carried regret. And somehow, that hurt more than anger ever could. I motioned toward the chair across from my desk. You have 10 minutes. She sat carefully, not because the chair was fragile, because she was. For several seconds, she simply stared at her hands. The clock on the wall continued ticking. Neither of us rushed to fill the silence. Finally, she spoke. I didn't come here to ask you to come back. I leaned back. Then why are you here? A sad smile touched her lips. Because I owe you the truth. Her fingers tightened together. I spent years convincing myself that I was doing all of it for us. I didn't interrupt. Every meeting, a pause. Every business trip, another pause. Every birthday I missed. Her voice weakened. Every anniversary. The office suddenly felt much smaller. Victoria lowered her gaze. At some point, success stopped being a goal. She swallowed hard. It became an addiction. The honesty surprised me. Not because I disagreed, because she was finally admitting it. I kept telling myself love could wait. Her eyes slowly lifted. That you'd always be there. The words landed heavily. Because they were true. For years, I'd always been there. Waiting, supporting, understanding, forgiving. Until I finally stopped. Victoria released a shaky breath. The company became the center of my world. A painful smile appeared. And somehow I convinced myself that was normal. I folded my arms. So where does Ryan fit into all of that? The question seemed to physically hurt her. Her eyes closed briefly. He made everything easier. I remained quiet. Not because I agreed. Because I wanted the complete answer. Victoria continued. He never challenged me. A bitter laugh escaped her. He told me exactly what I wanted to hear. The truth sat between us. Heavy and ugly. Ryan hadn't stolen Victoria from me. She had handed him the space I used to occupy. Because comfort is easier than accountability. And I had spent years holding up a mirror she no longer wanted to face. The 10 minutes became 30. Then 40. Neither of us noticed. By the time Victoria left, the office felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just different. The truth often leaves a strange kind of silence behind. The investigation against Ryan exploded during the following weeks. Every day brought new revelations. Hidden accounts, false reports, unauthorized transfers. More investors pulled out. More board members spoke publicly. News channels covered the story nonstop. Ryan's reputation collapsed. Victoria's suffered right alongside it. The public wasn't interested in details. They wanted someone to blame. And Victoria had trusted the wrong man. One evening, Daniel invited me to dinner. I almost declined. Then curiosity won. We met at a small restaurant near the waterfront. The same restaurant where Victoria and I celebrated our second anniversary. Life had a cruel sense of humor. Daniel stirred his coffee quietly. She's trying. The statement hung between us. Trying what? Try to fix things? I stared through the restaurant window. Cars moved past outside. People continued living their lives. The world always moves forward, no matter how broken someone feels. You can't fix everything. Daniel nodded. His expression grew older somehow. Sooner or later, she realized that. A long pause followed. Then he sighed. I warned her. My attention shifted back toward him. Daniel shook his head slowly. I told her companies can be rebuilt. His voice became softer. Loyalty is harder to replace. The sentence stayed with me long after dinner ended. Victoria started appearing in small ways. Not dramatic ways. Not desperate ways. Just quiet reminders of the past. One morning, a package arrived at my office. Inside was an old anniversary photograph. The frame had been repaired. The glass replaced. The picture restored. Victoria and me. Younger. Happier. Standing on a beach during our first vacation together. No note. No explanation. Just a photo. I stared at it for several minutes. Then placed it inside a drawer. Not because I hated it. Because I couldn't keep living inside memories. Another package arrived a week later. A handwritten letter. The envelope remained sealed. I recognized Victoria's handwriting immediately. I never opened it. The letter stayed inside my desk drawer. Days passed, then weeks. Still unopened. Some words arrived too late. Meanwhile, life kept moving. The consulting business expanded again. New employees joined. New clients arrived. The future started taking shape. A future that no longer depended on Victoria. That realization felt strange and powerful. Then came the hospital incident. I learned about it through Daniel. Victoria collapsed during a board meeting. Exhaustion. Stress. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to send her to the hospital. Daniel called that evening. His voice sounded tired. She asked for you. I closed my eyes. The apartment felt unusually quiet. What happened? Paperwork. I frowned. What paperwork? A bitter laugh came through the phone. The emergency contact form. Something inside me immediately understood. Daniel continued. Your name used to be there. I looked toward the window. The city lights blurred beyond the glass. Not anymore. No. His voice lowered. She stared at that form for 10 minutes. The image hit harder than I expected. Victoria is sitting alone in a hospital room, holding a clipboard, realizing the person she always assumed would be there no longer belonged there. Not legally, not emotionally, not practically. The consequences had finally become real. A month later, the divorce hearing arrived. The final step, the official ending. The courthouse felt cold, sterile, efficient. People entered married. People left divorced. Just another day for everyone except the people living it. Victoria sat across the waiting area, a few chairs apart. The distance felt symbolic somehow. Not far, yet impossible to cross. She wore a simple gray dress. No expensive jewelry. No CEO armor. Just Victoria. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Eventually, she reached in her bag. A folded envelope appeared. I wrote this months ago. She held it carefully, like something fragile. Never sent it. The unsent apology letter. I already knew. The envelope remained between us. Neither moving, neither reaching. Finally, she placed it back inside her purse. Maybe it's better that way. I nodded slightly. Neither of us argued. Because deep down we both knew some letters exist only for the person writing them, not the person receiving them. The hearing lasted less than an hour. Years of marriage ended through signatures and legal language. No dramatic speeches. No last-minute miracles. Just paperwork. When it was over, people slowly filtered out of the building. Victoria remained near the courthouse steps, waiting. The afternoon wind moved through her hair. Something told me she wasn't ready to leave. I stopped a few feet away. What is it? Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. For several seconds, she struggled to find the words. Then she finally met my eyes, and everything inside her expression changed. Not regret, not guilt, something deeper, something far more painful. Ethan, her voice nearly broke. There's one thing I never told you. A chill moved through me. The world around us faded into background noise. Cars, footsteps, conversations. None of it mattered anymore. Victoria swallowed hard. Tears never came. They didn't need to. The truth already lived inside her eyes. And whatever she was about to reveal looked powerful enough to change everything I thought I knew about our marriage. The courthouse steps suddenly felt colder. Victoria stood in front of me, holding a truth she had carried for years. People walked around us. Cars passed by. Life continued. Yet neither of us moved. Ethan, her fingers tightened around her purse. I never stopped loving you. The words landed softly. Not like a dramatic confession. Not like a desperate plea. Just truth. Raw and painful. I stared at her. Part of me expected relief. Part of me expected anger. Instead, I felt tired. Because somehow that answer hurt more than anything else. A bitter smile appeared. Then why did all of this happen? Victoria lowered her head. Several seconds passed. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. Because love wasn't the thing I chose. The honesty hit harder than any excuse. No blame. No lies. No attempt to rewrite history. Just truth. Tears never came. They didn't need to. Regret already lived in every word. I kept believing there would be more time. Her eyes met mine. One more meeting. A pause. One more project. Another pause. One more year. The wind moved through the empty space between us. Victoria forced a smile that quickly disappeared. I kept postponing us. My throat felt dry, until there was no us left. She nodded, slowly, painfully. Yes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Because there wasn't much left to say. The marriage was already over. The paperwork inside the courthouse had made that official. The choices before that had made it real. Ryan's downfall came faster than anyone expected. The investigation uncovered everything. The hidden transfers, the manipulated accounts, the false reports, the lies. Charges followed, then lawsuits, then public humiliation. Every news channel covered the story. The man who once stood beside Victoria on magazine covers became the face of corporate fraud. His career collapsed. His reputation disappeared. And for the first time since everything started, I realized something important. Watching him fall didn't make me happy. Because revenge wasn't healing. It was just another prison. The satisfaction lasted seconds. Peace lasted longer. Victoria paid her own price. Not through courtrooms. Not through criminal charges. Through loss. Investors removed her from several leadership decisions. Board members limited her authority. Part of the company she spent years building slipped from her control. Articles that once praised her judgment now questioned it. The public image she fought so hard to create cracked apart. Meanwhile, the one thing she couldn't replace was already gone. Me. Months passed. Life became quieter, healthier, simpler. The consulting company expanded into a larger office. New clients arrived every week. New opportunities appeared every month. Employees filled the rooms. Meetings filled the calendar. Dreams I had buried years ago finally had room to grow. One afternoon, Mia walked into my office carrying another stack of contracts. You remember when this place was 3 desks and a coffee machine? I laughed. Barely. She dropped the folders onto my desk. Good. Why? Means you're finally too busy living to keep staring backward. The smile stayed on my face long after she left. Because she was right. The past still existed, but it no longer controlled me. A few weeks later, I returned to the old house one final time. The property had already been sold. Most of the rooms sat empty. The place echoed differently now, like a memory slowly fading away. Victoria arrived shortly after. Neither of us seemed surprised. Maybe we both knew this meeting had to happen eventually. She stood in the living room, the same room where we once celebrated promotions, Christmas mornings, birthdays, anniversaries. Now it felt like a museum for a life that no longer existed. A cardboard box rested on the floor between us. Inside sat photographs, old keepsakes, Fragments of a marriage. Victoria picked up one picture. The beach photo. Our first anniversary. A sad smile touched her lips. We were happy. We were. She carefully placed the photo back into the box. Not onto a shelf. Not into a frame. Into storage. Exactly where memories belonged when their time had passed. The gesture felt strangely important. Like both of us finally understood reality. You can respect the past without living inside it. Outside the house, the evening sun painted long shadows across the driveway. This would be our final goodbye. No courtrooms, no lawyers, no business scandals. Just two people standing at the end of a road. Victoria broke the silence first. Can I ask you something? I nodded. Her eyes searched my face. Not for weakness, not for pity, just honesty. If things had happened differently. The question stopped halfway. She didn't need to finish it. I already understood. My answer came gently. They didn't. The words weren't cruel. They were simply true. Victoria lowered her gaze. A small laugh escaped her. Not a happy one. The kind people make when reality finally wins. Fair enough. Several seconds passed. Then she took a slow breath. No promises. I waited. No speeches. Another breath. No grand apology. Her eyes lifted again. But if I could go back. Emotion flickered across her face. I would have chosen you. The sentence hung between us. Beautiful. Painful. Meaningless. Because time only moves one direction. Toward tomorrow. Never yesterday. A strange calm settled over me. Not victory. Not revenge. Something better. Acceptance. I believe you. Victoria blinked. The answer clearly surprised her. You do? Yes. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Not from tears. From relief. Because after everything, I still believed her. The tragedy wasn't that she never loved me. The tragedy was that she realized what mattered after it was gone. Victoria stepped back. A final nod. A final smile. Then she turned and walked away. Neither of us called out. Neither of us stopped. Some endings deserve respect. This was one of them. 6 months later, life looked completely different. The company continued growing. The future continued opening doors. I had stopped measuring my worth through someone else's attention. Stopped waiting to be chosen. Stopped shrinking myself so another person could shine brighter. One evening, after finishing a meeting, I sat alone in my office. The city lights glowed beyond the windows. My phone buzzed. A notification appeared. At first, I almost ignored it. Then I froze. The message came from an old conversation. Victoria. Specifically, one message. One very old message. The anniversary message. The one I sent 6 months before discovering the divorce papers. The one that remained unread for all that time. My thumb hovered over the screen. The notification displayed only a few words. Opened. Just opened. After all this time, I stared at it for several seconds. Then I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because somehow it felt perfect. Too late. Just like everything else. The message had finally reached her. The same way my value finally reached her. The same way my absence finally reached her. The same way reality finally reached her. I opened the conversation one last time. Read the words. Happy anniversary. No matter how busy life gets, I'll always choose you. For a moment, memories drifted through my mind. The good ones. The painful ones. The lessons. The mistakes. The love. Then I smiled. A genuine smile. The kind that comes from peace. My finger moved across the screen. Delete conversation. Confirm. The chat disappeared. So did the final thread connecting me to a life that no longer belonged to me. Outside, the city continued shining. Inside, a future waited. I slipped the phone into my pocket, left the office, and walked toward the life I had finally learned to choose for myself.